We turn now away from our machzors for, I hope, a discussion, and I hope that people will participate in this discussion. So I just want to say a word of introduction. First of all, Brian, if you didn't grab the handout that was on the table before entering the sanctuary, Brian will hand you one now. And so let me just say a word of introduction about how this discussion is going to work, because we do have people joining us on live stream, and I want to invite those who are joining us on YouTube or Facebook that if you would like to participate in the discussion, you are welcome to offer comments on our discussion. I just cannot get to answering those comments or responding to them until after the holiday, but I promise at some point I will respond to your comments if you do wish to participate online. So the introduction about this text for Rosh Hashanah evening, you should have the discussion text that says, "A still small voice, Rosh Hashanah evening 5783 in front of you, and you can see the question is, where do you most sense God? So let me just back up a second and say a little bit more about why we're discussing tonight and also on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. We're going to have two discussions. This year I'm going to be offering a monthly class, an introduction to what's called the historical books of the Bible, Joshua, Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, and 1st and 2nd Kings. Those 6 books primarily constitute what's called the books that tell the history of ancient Israel and the early prophets and the first kings of Israel, and of course in Joshua and Judges, the taking of the land of Israel after the book of Deuteronomy concludes. So that's just a little bit to whet your appetite. So both of the texts for this evening and for second day of Rosh Hashanah are selected from one of these 6 books, just to give you a little taste of what we might be looking at in the course of this year of study. And so this selection is from, as you can see, 1 Kings, and it's an episode about the prophet Elijah. We're very familiar with the prophet Elijah. He figures quite prominently in our observance. We sing to Eliyahu Hanavi after we make Havdalah at the end of Shabbat, and of course, we welcome Elijah at the Passover Seder. That's when he is most welcome. And not too often, but when a child is born, we also welcome Elijah's presence. And that is because Elijah is seen as in the tradition as the one who will herald the coming of the Messiah and the perfection of our world. And he will announce who that is. That is Elijah's role in the future. And so that's why we welcome him at these moments and these occasions. We'll talk a little bit more about him, but I wanted to talk about his vision of God. And we have this very unique episode that I will read, and this is really just to set the stage for our discussion. Because part of the way that we look at biblical texts is not just what did they mean to Elijah in the 9th century BCE and to his contemporaries. We more importantly look at it in terms of what does it say to me and what does it say to us today? What meaning can we wrest from these texts? That's why we're still reading this book that was written so long ago. We continue to have the faith that it's going to say something to us today. It's going to give us some wisdom, some kernel of truth that perhaps we're searching for, perhaps we didn't even know we were looking for. And so Elijah, well, he was kind of a violent guy. I don't know how else to put this. He pretty much, slaughtered all of his enemies and his competitors. And so he really didn't, I don't think he was probably much fun to hang around with because he was quite zealous and he was quite filled with his sense of mission, so much so that he slaughtered the prophets of Baal, sort of the competing prophets, and that's sort of how he won the argument. I'm not suggesting that's meaning that we would take for today, but I'm just setting that as backdrop because he had this really violent tendency in terms of winning his argument. And this episode is really quite remarkable. And so that's the background for who he is and sort of how he behaves and sort of how he treats his contemporaries. And so now to read the text that I hope will offer something to start our discussion about where do we believe we find God and sense God. Then the word of the Lord came to him, Elijah that is, and he said to him, "Why are you here, Elijah?" And he replied, "I am moved by zeal for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to the sword. I alone am left, and they are to take my life. Come out," God called, "and stand on the mountain before the Lord." And so again, just a little bit of background there. The prophets also believe, and Elijah in particular in this case, they're the only ones who kind of hear the correct message, and everyone else is doing things wrong, and they're the, forgive me for putting it this way, the crazy person standing in the middle of the street saying, "You should be doing this and not that. How dare you behave this way? How dare you ignore God's command?" So here now, Elijah's expressing, in a sense, his loneliness. I'm the only one who sees this, and I'm all alone. And then here is the passage that is in the Hebrew above. "And lo, the Lord passed by, and there was a great and mighty wind, splitting mountains and shattering rocks by the power of the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a soft murmuring sound." And in Hebrew, called damama daka, like a still small voice, as I translated it, or just a small little echo almost. It's a very soft voice. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his mantle about his face and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And then a voice addressed him, "Why are you here, Elijah?" And he answered, "I am moved again by the zeal for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and have put your prophets to the sword. I alone am left, and they are out to take my life." The Lord said to him, "Go back the way you came, and on to the wilderness of Damascus." So now this passage that I've bolded for you, and that's in the Hebrew. As I said, Elijah was really kind of the violent, angry type, but in the end, he doesn't hear God in sort of the roaring thunder, the crashing mountains, the fire. It's this sort of still, small voice. So now here comes the discussion part, I hope. So what do you make of that? What does that mean? Now, I would like everyone who would like to participate to wait until we have some microphones, because I wouldn't want people who are joining us on Facebook and YouTube to miss out on your insights. And so I hope that's not going to deter anyone from sharing. But just, what does that mean? A soft murmuring sound. I hope I don't hear just a soft murmuring sound and I hear some participation. So what does that mean? Or let me take a step back. Does this at all help people in terms of where you might sense God? Does it work? Brian, you got to help me. Hang on, just wait. Okay, just go ahead. Wait one sec. He's got to turn it on. No, it's... Go ahead.
Is it on now?
Yes.
I think one can see God, in the quietest moment, and also, when a new baby is born, and that first glance you get at that new baby, you see him, and there's nothing but a murmur.
Oh, so that's interesting. You're hearing the word murmuring in terms of like a baby's sound almost.
Well, it could be.
Oh,
but there's no right or wrong answer.
No, there's absolutely no right or wrong answer, but I think that's a beautiful connection, that it's like almost like a baby's whisper, if you will, or a sound.
Yeah,
nice.
Just in the birth of a new life.
Excellent. All right, in the back. Hang on. Go ahead, Judy.
I think he's hearing the sound from within himself.
Oh, that's what the soft, that's what
That
the,
is, yes, this is something coming from within, not from.
not that outside earthquake
That
kind
is
of thing.
correct. That's
And does that, I hate to put you on the spot, but does that work for you? Does that make more sense to you than, as opposed to the big crashing mountains?
Yes,
You like that better?
for myself, yes.
Yeah, that's what this is just your response, so absolutely. So wonderful. Wait, let's say, hang on, just wait. Tom, go over and get the other microphone for your mom.
So about 3 years ago, I started to walk in the morning, and early morning before the sun came up. There were a lot of things going on in my life, and I found that the more I did it, the more I realized that I was starting to listen to the quiet of the morning and the quiet of nature. And when a car would go by on the road, on Cove Road, where I would walk, that noise of that car, I realized that was always me. That was always the noise, because I was always in my car when I was driving. I didn't hear what was going on around me outside. So what I've learned is that stopping to listen to the softness of the wind blowing, or even the wind blowing through trees, the birds, truthfully, that's connected me to who I am and what's really important in life. It's to appreciate the good things I have. I'd never understood that in all those years before, I think.
If I just can reflect back, I sense that part of what you're saying is that this soft murmuring sound, if we want to use this translation, requires a certain level of attentiveness and sort of almost slowing down and walking. So to hear it, which if you take Elijah's wisdom, then that means you have to really strain to hear God or to find God. That it's not the crashing cymbals.
Right.
It's the kind of quiet sound that you might hear.
But once I came to that realization that that's where it wasn't difficult. I didn't strain anymore.
Oh.
It was there. All you had to do was stop and listen to it and take the time to, where it's so weird because it was always there, but I never heard it.
Right. So once you sort of had trained yourself, if you will, or started walking, it became easier and easier.
Correct.
Right. Nice. Sally?
I'd say that I more hear God in his messages to me more than not really the wind or nature. I hear it more say if I'm running around and being crazy and I trip, I'm oh, that's God telling me that if I keep going, something bad is going to happen to me. So I need to chill out. But I don't really feel God in the wind. I'm not like that.
So it's not nature so much as opposed to signs or signals that you see in terms of your own life.
Yeah.
Nice. Good. Go ahead. Stacy? It's easy if you pass it just to the person next to you. Go ahead.
I focused mostly on in that passage on the word in, that the Lord was not in the wind, not in the earthquake. And I kind of relate to that because I don't feel like God is in anything. I feel it's sort of that overall presence in everything, and when you wake up and when you go to sleep, and if you trip or you fall or you hear a baby or God's not in it. God's just all around me. I've sensed that. I'm enveloped with God's presence rather than finding God within one particular thing.
That's beautiful. And do you have to kind of stop? How do you know that that's God's presence? How do you become attentive to it?
I just feel it. I wake up and I say to the kids, God gave us another one. What are we going to do with it? They can't stand me. I go to bed and I look at my husband and I thank God that I got another one. I guess it's just all very spiritual more than anything.
Nice. Erwin? Bruce, I need your help to pass the mic. No, wait 1 sec.
The microphone. It's required.
It's required, yes.
Are we talking about capturing this through meditation or clear mind, or somebody referred to running? getting outside of your normal world and saying there's more to this than me and what I do every day?
Well, I think part of what the lesson, at least that I take one piece is in terms of what people are sharing is like, how do you become attuned to this? And the thing that's instructive is that Elijah didn't seem always attuned. Like here's the prophet, he didn't seem to always get it. It wasn't always so simple to him. So part of it is how do you find it? And how do you train yourself to hear it or to find it or to sense God? That's what I hear. Is that responding to what you're asking? Yeah, but that's the ongoing struggle. That is the question. So, part of the framing is where do we sense God? But I think the larger question might be how do we train ourselves to sense God? I mean, if the whole point is that you have to sort of want it. And what's so helpful is Elijah's one of our heroes. We sing about him a lot. And he didn't always get it right. So all the more so, that's kind of helpful. Like all the more so, okay, I'm not going to always get it right. I might find, and honestly, maybe walking works for some time. You might have to shift strategies depending on where you are in life. But what I find so instructive is it's not going to hit you like a lightning bolt. Right? It's not going to just come and get you with some, loud sign that everybody's going to say, oh, that's God. It's not going to be that. It's going to stuff that you have to really kind of lean in and listen for and pay attention to. And that is an ongoing and difficult effort. And I wouldn't imagine that all of us have the same answer. Cantor, you wanted to share something? Yes, please. Sally has a microphone.
Yeah. So I was thinking that the more that we can approach each other with a gentleness, a softness, and have compassion and empathy for the other person, for each other, I feel like when I feel that, I'm given that space from someone, or if I give that to someone, I feel most connected to people, to the universe, to godliness, to the spark in all of us. So I think having that slowing down, softening approach.
And that's how you're reading the Call to Mamad.
Yeah, I'm thinking like maybe
it's like a soft kind
like a softening and opening your heart to your neighbor, to the other person,
right?
And really understanding what they're going through and connecting in that way.
Nice. That's very nice. And it's also, what's beautiful is the contrast, because Elijah was hard, he was like pounding all the time. He was hitting, he was like punching at everything, and as I said, he was violent. He's punching and hitting and pounding his fist, pointing his finger, and in the end, God says, call to Mamad Daka. Kind of slow down. It's the soft approach that is where you're really going to find it. And that's just a beautiful image. So thank you for adding that in terms of the soft kind of approach, because I think that is something that all of us can take, and a beautiful idea. My final thought that I want to leave you with, and to round out this discussion, I don't imagine we will have finished answering this question by the time we leave services, but it is an ongoing effort. That is the most important thing. And if we really want to find God, people often say, where is God? The answer here is, well, you kind of got to look really hard, and you got to listen, and you got to try, and you got to pay attention to the signs and signals, or the soft voice, or just slow down. Don't pound your fist or lash out. Instead, just pay attention. It's there, and sometimes it's easy to hear, and sometimes it's difficult to hear. But we just have to work on the listening and the attentiveness. That's the lesson I take from Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. I want to thank everyone for participating, and again, for those who are joining us online, if you want to add comments online, I promise I will respond at a later date. And certainly those who are here, if you want to respond online, if you think of something late tonight, you can add it there too, and our discussion can continue. Thank you for your participation.